Nostalgia is a very powerful tool, and something that companies love to use to make us buy whatever product they're selling, even if it ain't really that great. But what is the most blatant and shitty is nostalgia that is only used to make a quick buck out there? A lot of people tend to either say games that make a series regress into a bad state due to pandering to nostalgia, or cheap indie games that are there that make people relive their childhood with no effort into them. But in my eyes, the worst type is fake compilations. Now, since I just kind of pulled that term out of my ass, let me explain what that means. Fake compilations are games based on other IPs. But instead of emulating ROMs or making their own nice sequelish games, they instead make cheap knockoffs that have little to no effort into them. One of the best examples of this is the game we're going to be talking about today, Retro. Yes, that's the real title of the game. Released in 2006 exclusively in the EU, developed by Aqua Pacific, known for other games of similar quality levels, and published by... Oh no. Yeah, this is going to be a real fun one, but before I get into this, I'll say that this game is going to be looked at differently compared to most games, as these games don't have a framing device, and are so simple it won't take more than a minute or two to explain. Now let's get on and look at this special pair of games that we have here. For our first game here, it's Gobbler. This one is a Pac-Man clone, and when we start up the game, yeah, this isn't pushing the PS2 at all. And this is 2006, mind you. And would you hear all that music? Beautiful. This applies to all the games here as well, even though they had a menu song, so they could make music. They just chose not to for some reason. So yeah, beyond that, the mazes are okay. They're certainly better than Pac-Guy's mazes, but still fall into traps of bad Pac-Man mazes. But on the positive side, at least it has multiple mazes and they didn't screw up the controls, but it would have to take a really stupid person to fuck up the controls of Pac, so I won't give him too much credit there. Next is Roids, and based on the grammatically incorrect title, it's an Asteroids clone, and once again it's bad. And I mean, when we first boot up the game, we see the best model of a mashed potato ever. Yeah, this really was a PS2 game in 2006 alright, and I'm gonna hammer that fact in, as 2006 was actually a pretty great year in gaming if I'm being honest. This was real, in a way. Other than that, though, there isn't really much at play, with the biggest flaw here is that the game doesn't really change up one bit. I mean, there's a ship you can shoot down for bonus points, but that's all in terms of variety. But the hyperspeed button is fun to spam, so there's at least that. Well, that was short. So now on to Laser Command, a clone of Missile Command. First, let me see whether this game is the best game graphically. Yeah, this. The best they could do in 2006. I mean, the other games here just have a super compressed JPEG of a space background, but now we have a cheaply designed city background and ground. Yes, ground. But this still looks very amateurish, and this is far from retail quality, even for a budget title. The gameplay is also rather bad since the cursor is so slow and you'll barely make it to destroying the ships. And even then, it's a little confusing on how you do it, and the enemy can destroy your cannons, thus making you vulnerable. And since your cannons are all the way up at the top, it's easy for them to do it and kamikaze all your little dudes. Now up is Galaxy Wars, and it's a clone of Space Invaders, and it's fine. Definitely the most uninteresting of all the collections. It's just Space Invaders for the lazy skin and stay onto it. Nothing really too much wrong, but not too much right either. So next, Bounce and Break is up now, and it's a combination clone of Arkanoid and Breakout, since it has Breakout's more simplistic level designs, while also having Arkanoid's power-up system, where you could basically get all the power-ups that Arkanoid basically has. And this is probably both the best and worst graphically at the same time. The best because it looks like it's actually in a different environment other than generic space world, but at the same time it doesn't feature any background, so it's kind of like a construction place. Very barren construction place, but I guess it's something different. And no music as well. Very boring. But it does have sound effects, which kind of grate on you after a while, but it's not really all too bad. And when you complete a level, you get the best thing that the PS2 has ever pushed out. Masterful. Excellent. Super awesome. Well, yeah, other than that, there isn't much spice after the first level, so yeah. on to the next one. Well, now we have a clone of Frogger, where we go through Untextureville, where the sound effects take away your Sandy one by one. And one, and one, and one, and one, and one, and one, and one. Yeah, that's all I have to say, alongside the fact that the controls are also slow as well. Though it is slightly better than Gobbler in terms of controls, but that isn't really saying too much, since Frogger is also kind of simple to control as well. Man, we're blowing through all these quick. Well, now let's get on to Bubble Puzzle. A Puzzle Bobble clone, better known as Bust a Move, or if we want to go even more general, it's a bubble shooter. It plays fine for the most part, and is probably the best gameplay-wise because it's somewhat engaging. But there are two problems with the controls. One, the up and down D-pad doesn't do much, which is very bad and makes the controls more inefficient. And two, there's no trigger controls, which means that you can't make small adjustments if you need to be precise. Which you do kind of need to be precise in this game. But other than that, it's fine. But let's get on to the final game, and probably in my eyes, the worst of the bunch. Light Racer is a clone of Tron's Light Racing segment, a game that, compared to the others, I'm not as familiar with, but I still played it to get a good idea, and it does seem like a nice inclusion since it got no home ports back in the day, and the only other port wouldn't come out until 2008, 2 years later, on Xbox Live Arcade, so let's hope they don't fuck it up. They fucked it up. While I could get over the obvious issues that pertain to the entire collection, let's instead go over the game's biggest issue. The controls. Instead of moving in the direction you want by pressing the respective part of the D-pad, or if you're a madman, the analog stick, like the arcade game, you instead have to push L1, L2, or left to go counterclockwise, or R1, R2, or rights to go clockwise. It is really clunky and actually ran into some walls since I couldn't remember in time which button turned in which direction, which really sucks for a game that is fast-paced as this. If you can even call it fast in the first place, it's very baffling that they didn't instead go with the obvious option. I wouldn't complain if they could set your controls in the multiple modes, but no, you can't do that for any game here, nor can you change the options for lives and such as well. It's overall the worst game in the collection for being such a disappointment and ending this thing off on a sour note. In the end though, this game is just another cheap cash grab that's meant to cash in on nostalgia. Though, at the very least I would have expected competent work considering that they only had to do 8 games. But they failed super hard on even that level. What makes this even worse is that their previous title in 2005, called The Arcade, which is still shovelware, but it had 2 more games, and even previews. So for them to downgrade to that level is even worse in my eyes. This game on my scale would get a 3 out of 10 due to its poor games, lack of quality control, and this being sold in stores for the PS2 despite it being something a high score made in a month. There are way better games you can get your retro fix on the PS2, so just skip it and never think about it, especially if you're not from the European region.